people who grew up in third world countries, what was the biggest shock for you when moving into a developed country? My roommate's coworker is from Guatemala. He says one of the best things about the US is that when you call for an ambulance, one actually shows up even if you aren't rich or important. Oof, that's sad. How expensive many things are while certain things are very cheap, but there's always enough. I grew up in Costa Rica. When I moved to the US, everything was way cheaper. Then I realized how expensive everything in my country is. I mean, $13 for a small pizza is not okay. $13 for a small pizza is pretty stock standard here in Australia. $13, that's a bloody outrage, it is. The quality of the public infrastructure and how respectful city planning is with pedestrians. Sydney is full of beautiful little gifts in the shape of shortcuts, stairs, parks, pathways. Everywhere. It truly is a joy to just walk through the city. Also, dogs are more polite than people where I come from. Sydney is the first Western settled city I visited last year, and I can't thank my lucky stars enough that I am moving there permanently in a few months. Not getting suspicious when a stranger talks to you on the street. I can't get over it, I get anxious every time, but people in Canada don't seem to mind at all where I come from. When a stranger approaches you, you nope the fuck out. I'm from South England and no strangers would talk to each other, you'd be considered an absolute lunatic. If you did want to talk about something, you'd have to strike a conversation about something we can all relate to, like the shitty weather. But I've heard about how nice it is in Canada, and my friend was shocked when people just randomly started talking to her on public transport, but she welcomed it. I lived in England for a few years and noticed that too. But in my experience it was mainly due to just not wanting to talk to people, as opposed to the fear of getting robbed or assaulted, and to be honest, I respect that, very relatable as an introvert. Safety when walking on the streets during night. When in Brazil, I used to wait for my wife on the bus stop from college. As she usually left college around 2200 hours, it was dangerous. We used to live on a central zone, and her college was also central. In Ireland, if she leaves a party at 3 o'clock, I don't get concerned at all. So great to live without being afraid. It took us about 1 year to relax. This happens a lot in South America. I'm from Chile and is the same. We as women can't walk at night alone. It's dangerous. I visited my cousins in the US once. I was surprised that your houses don't have walls around them. There were only those fences at the side and back that pretty much anyone can jump over. Where I live, the only houses who don't have walls surrounding them are those in compounds or subdivisions that have roaming security guards. Paid security guards, not volunteers like the neighborhood watch kind of thing. Edit. To the people asking, I'm from the Philippines, but it's interesting to see that other countries carry this tradition practice. Edit. Not really a wealthy family, but not really a from dangerous neighborhood. It's pretty standard here to have at least a 2-meter tall concrete walls if you have middle income, but those poor ones just settle with barbed wire. What country? Edit. So apparently this is very common all across the world, including all of Latin America, Eastern Europe, the Middle East, Pakistan, the Philippines, Indonesia, and probably more places. TBH, as a child in a developed country I didn't get this either. Fences are practically decoration. And windows are so fragile. Anyone could break into a house if they wanted to. But there's police, I guess, and usually the law will simply catch up with anyone who tries something like that in these countries. Edit. Goddang, you people like to talk about your fences. I meant they were practically decoration in terms of security. I understand they have other purposes as well. Thank you everyone for the upvotes. This is my highest comment by far. I always assumed fences were more about privacy, animal containment, than they were keeping people out. They are where I live. So I have a 4-foot wooden fence around the yard with 3 unlocked gates. Keeps the dogs in and the kids out. But, for example, I visited Mexico City last year. Around their yards are 6-foot tall masonry fences with coils of barbed wire on top, bars over the windows, and they do not park their cars on the street, they're behind locked gates. Giant grocery stores are full of food and always fully stocked. Coming from Ukraine to USA in the 90s, my entire family's jaws dropped for hours. Ha, my dad's from Munich and my mom's from Krakow, and the stories about their childhoods are sometimes so different because of that. Like my mom will tell you how oranges were a delicacy that you only had for special occasions, while my dad will be like, oh, when we were bored, we used to throw them at each other for fun. Now my parents grew up in the 50s and 60s in Italy and told me many times that at Christmas the most common presents were peanuts, walnuts or oranges and stuff like that. That used to be pretty common in the US for poorer families. My grandma said, she's not very reliable, so I might get this wrong, that they'd fill stockings with nuts and fruit like oranges and apples because they were cheaper than candy and healthier. If she got the kids candy for Christmas, they would only be able to get a few pieces because that's all she could afford. But they got an apple and an orange each, and a whole bunch of nuts. My mom still puts apples and oranges in our stockings because that's what she got as a kid. My dad got oranges and peanuts for Christmas, too. He grew up in a poor rural southern community. Post-war they lived in an old farmhouse lined with newspapers. In the 50s they built a new house. They would get one bowl of popcorn to share with 6 brothers on Saturday evening. I'm sitting here with my dishwasher running and sipping coffee. Different times for sure. The lights. So many lights, from street lamps, traffic lights, huge buildings lit up all night. Oh, and the highways blew my mind. They were so white and full of so many cars. I was 6 and I'll never forget that first drive from the airport to my new home in December. It was also my first time seeing snow. Edit. I joined Reddit a few days ago, and today I got some awards and coins I'm not sure what you're supposed to do with. Thank you. Also, I moved from a small southern Croatian village, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia at the time, 1989, to Toronto. I went to rural Kenya for work once, and the lack of lights was the first thing I noticed. I grew up in a very small town, out in the county in the United States, so I was used to less light pollution than most people here, but I'd never experienced anything like this. Just a total lack of any electric lights for miles and miles. Edit. For those asking, the stars are absolutely incredible, even coming from someone who is used to seeing a lot of stars. It's on another level. I watch shows like Ancient Aliens for fun, and when I hear those nutjobs talk about how they don't understand how the ancients could have possibly mapped the sky so well, I just say, they've clearly never been to a place with zero light pollution. You can see everything.